Hello there and welcome to another live chapter reading for Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I shall be reading from The Travler Book 3 by Deborah Dugan. Prologue. Harry's transformation to his current physical configuration began when the planet's surface was itself being transformed. A chance lightning strike, momentarily holding a microcosm of the sun's incandescent power, energised a single cell floating in a tidal pool, causing that single cell to begin the process of becoming a multicellular mite. After a time, lightning found the tidal pool again. This time the energy caused the beginning formation of a nascent brain. Eventually the mite had been reconfigured into a proto-animal, which became caught in a tidal surge that washed it into the ocean. Violent storm winds and towering ocean waves created a whirlpool into which the proto-animal was dragged, its tentacles flailing behind it as it was spun, held against the wall of the rapidly spinning whirlpool. Lightning found it again, striking the water directly above the proto-animal as it spun. The whirlpool gathered the energy of the lightning strike, and the proto-animal was enveloped in energy as it spun. The energy that enfolded the proto-animal did not fade completely. Some remnants remained captured in its cells. The forces exerted by the spinning whirlpool, together with the captured lightning energy, combined to create a chemical process unique in the universe, and unique to this proto-animal only. The proto-animal felt an urge to drive itself to the darker, deeper reaches of the ocean, and then another that drove it to dig a long, sloping tunnel into the ocean bed. Curled into a small space at the end of the tunnel, the proto-animal's new chemical processes put it into stasis, a state in which it would remain for millennia after millennia. As it slept, the proto-animal would continue to change, to evolve from within its own form. Eventually, the proto-animal's epoch-spanning journey from the ocean depths to dry land resulted in a being of seemingly unlimited hunger and no intelligence, other than the instinct to feed. Many ages later, after unknown numbers of stasis periods, the being had evolved into a four-limbed creature that lived in the forests of the land in which it had last awoken. That version of the being still had no awareness of self, and its primary goal was to avoid becoming prey. Many millennia later yet, the being awoke again to find it had evolved into a humanoid body with a fierce intelligence and special abilities to manage internal and external energy flows. Sentience and finally self-knowledge had developed in tandem with the physical changes. After untold millions of years, though, innumerable geologic ages, and the being that began as the proto-animal alternately lived its lives and slept through periods of stasis, during which its physical transformation continued to evolve, until it became Harry's present-day configuration. All his lives remained connected through time by a thread of seeming immortality. His many names have hung from that thread, each name ephemeral with the evanescent ebb and flow of Harry's lives. He had lived many thousands of lives with no name, and wasn't aware of the lack. But then he came to be named Small Brother by an old father, and then New One by Strong Spirit, and subsequently Stalker by Jack the Collier, until the time came when he finally named himself Harry. Part 1, Present Day. Chapter 1. It's been a couple of months since Harry returned, and Elena and I have had a chance to adjust to him a bit more. He'd been gone for about 5 years, and for me, it's like meeting him all over again. I remember the first time I saw him when he was in his spider configuration, and what a complete freak-out I had. At the time, I had a severe spider phobia, and to say the beginning of the relationship was a little rocky is like saying the Himalayas at all. To cap things off, Harry wasn't just your garden variety spider. Of course not. He was a tarantula, and an extraordinarily large one at that. Eventually I got over myself and was able to see Harry as a living, intelligent being, but still definitely not human. Apparently not an extraterrestrial alien either, but just between us, it wouldn't surprise me at all to find out at some point that he actually is an alien. I mean, he's the first to say he doesn't remember everything in his past. It's hard to imagine the apparently thousands and thousands of lives Harry has lived. He talks about what he refers to as his past lives, but it's not what we humans would normally understand as reincarnation. Harry doesn't die and get reborn into another body. Instead, he goes into what he describes as stasis periods, When he comes out of each one, he says most of the time he'll have a new configuration. He will have been in one bodily form when he conked out, and most usually, at least to some extent, a different bodily form, configuration, when he wakes up. It seems that often the reconfigurations are pretty dramatic, like this most recent change. In spite of my initial phobia, I became very attached to Harry the tarantula, but when he woke a few months ago and Elena found him in the backyard, he had changed into a completely different form. I still see mental images of his former tarantula configuration, and it's just crazy that now he's configured as a very large giant Asian mantis, he can actually speak out loud now and fly. He's also got these little mitten-type hands with actual thumbs. He's really excited about having thumbs. I'm going to go out on a limb here and show my squishy side. It's actually pretty adorable. Harry says he's not exactly sure what triggers the stasis process, except for the times he's gotten critically injured and the process overtakes him. From what he's described, in some lives he's been injured so thoroughly that us humans wouldn't have been able to tell he wasn't clinically dead. Considering the thousands of epochs he has lived through, my guess is that mostly dead is the most obvious and probably most frequent stasis trigger, since he would have needed repairs to fix the mostly dead parts in order to have the future functionality. Since he's here now, we can have the subjective versus objective reality debate another time. It would appear he hasn't been completely dead yet, which seems beyond unrealistic. If we were bringing reality into this discussion, although it occurs to me that if he was clinically dead at some point, would that necessarily mean that every single cell in whatever body he had at the time would have been dead all at the same time? No life spark whatsoever? If even one cell remained alive, would that be enough to trigger stasis and relife him? Harry doesn't remember enough to know one way or the other, and as I have zero related knowledge or training, I'm taking things at face value. The stasis for the mostly dead scenario doesn't give him much time to find a safe place to lie low for the duration of the incredibly long periods he's been in stasis. There are other times when he will become increasingly lethargic. He knows stasis is inbound and has time to find a safe place to hunker down for a few millennia or so. Harry thinks the lethargy-based type of stasis may enable him to develop a deeper configuration to suit the next epoch he faces. Sometimes the stasis period can be much shorter, like this last 5-year period. He was forced into stasis that time because he had expended every atom of his energy store to save the life of our elderly neighbour, Mrs. Gonzalez. She had suffered a heart attack, and Harry somehow used his energy to act as a living defibrillator. I don't fully understand the mechanism he used, but he got her heart started, which kept her alive until the EMTs arrived. I had to go to the hospital with her, and when I got back, Harry was gone, and I didn't know where. He was gone for 5 years. A relatively long time to us humans, but a figurative eye blink for Harry. Elena is doing great with him and he has a mighty crush on her. At first she had a couple of alien brain-eating nightmares that took her a couple of days to get over. Like me, when she first heard Harry talking, it was difficult for her to come to grips with Harry as a non-human being and not actually an insect at all. At first she thought we might be lying in a coma with a brain tumour and hallucinating like crazy. I assured her that was not the case, but then for a couple of hours she was suspicious of me and my friend Dan, and thought it was all a bizarre prank. It took several weeks for her to steady out and come to see Harry as I see him. She still gets sort of a bemused expression on her face whenever she's around him, though. She drove into work today and blew Harry a kiss as she went out the door. Speaking of, I have to get busy with today's work myself, so I head back to my office, which is just a small desk and an office chair, wedged in with miscellaneous stuff stored in the extra bedroom. On my way there, I stop in the living room beside Harry's aquarium and tap on a glass to get his attention. "Hey pal, how'd you like to observe a master of technology at work today?" Harry flits up to sit on the edge of his aquarium and looks at me questioningly. "I'd like that, but who are we going to observe?" "You really know how to hurt a guy, Harry. I was talking about me. I thought you'd like to see up close what a modern-day workday looks like. You know, a non-human version of take your kid to work day. When you were here before, I was still commuting to the office most weekdays. Things changed a lot while you were gone. Remind me to tell you about a little thing we call the pandemic. During the quarantine, I worked from home like everyone else." This setup worked pretty well, and now the company is letting people keep doing that, except for the occasional face-to-face meeting I can't weasel out of. I don't miss a daily drive time, I can tell you that. Come on, up you go. I pat my shoulder and Harry flits up and settles himself close to my ear. I pick up my coffee cup and walk down the hallway to my office. I flip the lights on, sit in my comfy swivel chair and fire up my laptop. Harry drifts down to the desktop and gets up close to the laptop screen. You know you'll wreck your eyes getting that close to the screen. Back up a few steps. Harry moves back one whole step and appears to be mesmerised by the wallpaper display of fish darting about a coral reef. I've often wondered how this is different from TV. I'm not sure it's all that different in terms of using the system for entertainment instead of work purposes. I guess you've seen that the everyday electronics most people use are all different kinds. Each kind supposedly has a primary use, but I'm not sure I believe that, at least for phones and laptops. For instance, I could make calls from my laptop, but if I want to chat to someone on the fly, I'm going to use my phone to actually make a call. Not to show my age, but I think a lot of people use their phones just for social media. I mean, why talk when you can text, right? Harry nods, but I think he looks a little confused. I try to give a better explanation. Personally, I think it's more about how we use our various devices than the devices themselves. Unless, of course, you're Team Apple and have several mortgages to cover device upgrades, we can listen to music, watch music or movies or TV shows, and play games on the TV. This laptop and my cell phone pretty much whatever we want, whenever we want. Harry moves back a couple more paces and watches closely as I use the keyboard to type in a laptop password. The home screen comes up and I select my email icon. The app opens up and voila, there are a lot of emails waiting for me. I sigh and take a sip of coffee. I check the time and see that I can probably fool around for a few more minutes before I have to dive in. Harry looks up at me with what I think is a hopeful expression. You mentioned listening to music. Is that something that's difficult to arrange? I would love to be able to listen to music now and then, especially if you and Elena aren't home. I could slap myself for being an idiot. It's not difficult at all, Harry, and I'm sorry I didn't think of it myself. Let's go in the living room and I'll get it set up for you. Then I'll come back in here and get to work. I have the phone in the pocket of my robe, no need for actual work clothes, pants if you work from home, right? And huff around while trying to get the phone charger detangled from everything else plugged into the power strip under the desk. The robe is not optimal wear for this task. It's actively fighting my knees. I'm a little out of breath after climbing under the desk and conclude that it won't be a bad idea for me to get more exercise. Just a little more. No need to go crazy and join a gym or something. I wrap the long phone charger cord into loops around one hand and with my other I gesture for Harry to climb aboard. We make our way back down the hall, but at first I take a quick detour to the kitchen for a coffee refill. Harry declines, saying he's had enough caffeine for now. Back in the living room, we get settled into the recliner with Harry perched on the chair arm. I show him the control on the side of the phone and move the volume up and down so we can see how it works. I lower the volume again and put the phone flat on the chair arm. Harry flies down to sit beside it to try the volume control himself. I'm thinking he won't be able to move the toggle up and down, but to my surprise he manages to do it. I suspect his tiny mantis arms are stronger than they appear to be. This is wonderful, Tristan. Would you be able to leave your phone out here with me while you work? I stand up and make sure the charger cord is out of the way. Sure, that's no problem. If I need to make a call, I'll just come out here and we'll share the phone. I pick up my coffee and take a noisy slurp. You build your playlist and later you can show me what you've put together. Harry is engrossed with the phone and doesn't look up as I leave, but he waves a hand at me over his shoulder. I hear a couple of different songs start, then stop as I meander back down the hallway to my office. I feel pretty pleased with myself that I've introduced Harry to the digital age. I hope you enjoyed the chapter reading and that you'll go check out the book. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.